we've got so much rain this year, and again this week we get rain, we get snow, we get sleet, and then all the sleet and snow melts and we get more rain. So currently our rivers that are normally resting at 3 or 4 feet are up at 15, 16 feet. So unfortunately it's going to be another week without client trips, another week without fishing. And anytime I get the chance to, I go through all my gear, I tie new leaders, I put new hooks on baits, I just tidy everything up and get it ready, because it might be another 3 or 4 weeks before I get the chance to. So that's what we're going to be doing today. I'm going to show you guys exactly what gear that we use while we're out in the river fishing for muskie. I'm going to show you what baits we like to use. I'm going to show you the leaders, what kind of knots I tie, the fly gear, the rods, reels, lines, leaders, all the stuff concerning flies. And yeah, let's get to it. Alright, so let's start out with the reels. Now I've tried just about everything on the market. I'm particular to the low profile casting reels, as most musky anglers are. And I've got a little selection here, kind of a good wide spectrum from cheap to premium. And let's start with the Daiwa Lexa. Now this is a Lexa 300 HS. It's about a $200 reel. You can find them cheaper sometimes. This one's pretty old and beat up, and this is a good starting point for musky fishing. A lot of anglers getting into the sport end up with the Daiwa Lexa. It's just a good starting point reel. They're not the best built reels on the market, but again, it's a $200 musky reel, so you're gonna get what you pay for when it comes to musky fishing. And I tell everyone that is looking for advice on what gear to get to start up, I always tell people, put the money into the reel, because that's what's going to be taking the most abuse and what is going to wear out the quickest for you. So $200 reel. Alright, next up is the Okuma Komodo SS. This is the KDS 463 PLX. That's the model for this Komodo. It is high-speed gear ratios. I don't think it's the fastest Komodo available. I think the fastest is the 471. But as you can see, I personally use left-hand retrieve, so some of the models aren't always available if you're a left-hander. But the gearing in this reel is plenty fast enough. It's by no means a slow reel, and I like to use this one for throwing heavy plastics, pounders, bulldogs, medusas, big swim baits. It's just a rock solid reel. It's built really well, and it comes in around the $200 mark. It's another budget reel, but by no means is this a cheaply built reel. This is actually one of the best built musky reels that I've used. It's just bulletproof. It's rock solid. It's got metal gears. It's got a really hard outer exterior. Everything in it is built well. The only downside to this reel, I would say, is the weight and the size. It's a really big reel. If I put another 400 size reel up next to it, it is much bigger and much heavier. So that's one reason why I don't have more of these. I like to keep it on my rods that are throwing, again, the medusas, bulldogs, heavy soft plastics. It's just a really good reel for that, and it's a budget reel, $200. So good starting point if you're getting into musky fishing. Next up is the Abu Garcias. Now we've got two different Garcias here. We've got a Rebo Toro S, which is about $180 to $200 reel. Good starting point, although it is an Abu Garcia, and I'm not a huge fan. I have bought them. I've bought quite a few of them, and I've been through them, changed gears, and they're just not the best built reels for musky fishing. This is the Abu Garcia Beast. This is a $400 reel. And it's kind of considered top of the line for musky fishing as far as Abu is concerned, but even at $400, I've broken it. I've probably broken this reel more times than any other reel I've owned. And Abu does have a good warranty. You call them up, you tell them what gear you broke in it, what parts you need, and they'll send them for free. But you have to have the time and know-how to be able to service this reel yourself. But out of the box, it's great. You know, for the first month or two of owning this reel, I loved it. But one winter season, man, and it It couldn't take it, could not take the torture. Moving on, the Shimano Tranx. Now this is, to me, the all-time best musky reel right here. They make a 400 series and a 500 series. It is one of the quickest reels on the market. I think one turn on this high-speed version brings in 40 inches of line. That's fast, and so for fishing bucktails or crankbaits, it's really nice to have that high speed. And they're also really good reels. They're built well. They're super light. I think this is the lightest low profile musky reel on the market. Super light. So you pair that with like a St. Croix Legend Tournament rod and it's just about as light as a bass setup. It just, no weight to it, and you can fish all day and not get tired. Just a really nice reel. I've got 3 of these now, and this is probably the only reel that I will purchase from here on out is the Tranx 400 and the Tranx 500 series. They're just, in my opinion, they're the best musky reels on the market, but they're pricey. You're gonna pay $350 for one of these, and they come with the Shimano warranty, Shimano guarantee, so that's nice to have. Just a really good reel. So there you go. There's others available. Some that I didn't mention. The Lexas come in many different models. The Lexa WN, I think, is the cheaper models. They have several different Lexas. They've got several different models of the Revos. And of course Shimano, they have the 400s and the 500s. This one right here is the 401 HG. The 1 stands for left-handed and the HG stands for high speed or high geared. So there you have it. There's the reels, and I'll put links to all of these reels in the description if you're interested, or if you want to look at the product description for more information, or if you want to order one yourself. I will have links to all of these in the description. So next up is going to be rods. Now when it comes to rods, you've got way more to choose from. There's just so many different makes, brands, models out there. So probably the most popular for starting out is the St. Croix Mojo Musky. This rod is basically what everyone goes to for their first casting musky rod. A lot of people, at least, not everyone, but it's a good starting point, and it is a great rod. These are glass rods and they are really well made. Moving on, another good budget rod is the Bulldog series rods. These are made by Musky Innovations. Cheaper rod, I think you can find these for around 100 bucks. This one right here is, I believe, an 8'6" or an 8-foot Bulldog rod, and it's rated to throw like 10 to 14 ounces or something like that. They're really tough, heavy rods. Good starting point rod, Bulldog rods by Musky Innovations. Go check them out. Next up is the Abu Garcia Veritas. Now, Abu's been making this rod for bass fishing for a while now, but this one right here, I believe, was made for muskies. It is an 8-foot, heavy action, heavy fast action, rated for 4 to 10 ounce lures. Okay, so this is like a really good glider rod, throwing glide baits. It's got a soft tip, but still enough power to throw up to 10 ounces. And I picked one of these up last year, and I like it. I really do like it. It's comfortable. It's got really good ergonomics on it. It's got a really strong midsection to it, so you can throw bigger baits if you want to. But I do like this rod for throwing my larger gliders, like Magnum Sidewinders and big slow flows. Just some of my heavier gliders, that handles them really well. So for glider fishing, you want a soft tip. You know, to get that correct action on the gliders, you really want a soft tip. So this makes a great glider rod. And I believe this cost about 120, right around there, depending on what length and action that you choose. I think it's about $120 to $150 rod. My favorite of musky rods, this is the St. Croix Legend Tournaments. These are probably my favorite musky rod out there. for throwing everything except large, heavy, soft plastics. This handles bucktails, this will handle crankbaits, it'll handle glide baits, it'll handle just about everything except the really heavy stuff. You can see this one's been through the ringer as well. It's got some tape on it, it's got lots of scratches and dings in it, but man, these things are just so light. They weigh nothing. It's like a bass rod, honestly. You know, pair it up with a Shimano Tranx and it's got to be the lightest musky setup you could have. And these Legend Tournament glass rods, they are awesome. Really, really good rod. So much action in the tip. I use this one right here for bucktails and smaller glide baits. That extra action it has in the tip just makes running a glide bait so easy, and with the bucktails you can fling them across the river like nothing. So right there, if you've got the money to spend on a musky setup, what I would suggest is a St. Croix Legend Tournament rod, 8 foot at least, and pair it with a Shimano Tranx 400. That right there is probably the nicest setup you can have. Alright, moving on, let's discuss fly fishing. Again, there's a lot to choose from. I'm just going to show you 2 setups to get started and kind of make the point over rod weight and the size of fly rod that you want to get for musky fishing. So out here on the table I've got a TFO 10 weight and I've also got a TFO 12 weight. This is the SOX rod. This is a discontinued model, the TR-CRX 10 weights. I've got 2 of these. They're great rods. But what I really want to get into here is a lot of guys get started out fly fishing for musky and everyone says, oh, get a 10 weight. That's all you need. 10 weight is good enough. That's what I did starting out. I got a 10 weight. And while it is good enough, it will throw most musky flies. The more you get into it, the more you fish, the bigger your flies are going to get. Now granted, sometimes the musky want a small fly. Sometimes we catch them on little 4 or 5 inch flies. But most of the year, especially during the winter season, the bigger the fly you throw, sometimes the bigger the fish you catch. So I have been recommending everyone that asks to go ahead and get a 12 weight to start with. It's not going to cost you much more money, and it's really not that big of a difference throwing flies between a 10 and 12, but it just gives you the extra room to graduate to larger flies if you want to. 12 weight, I would say, is a good starting point if you're getting into musky fishing. It also allows you, while you're learning to cast, it's going to be much easier to cast a 12 weight with a 400 to 500 grain line than it is a 10 weight with a 300 to 400 grain line. Just makes life a lot easier with a 12 weight and on up even. Brent's been using 13 to 15 weights a lot this year, and I've tried them out and they're awesome. They make casting less of a chore. You're not tired after a full day of casting. So I would try to persuade people, if you're getting into musky fishing with a fly rod, I would say don't necessarily go for that 10 weight. I know a lot of people recommend 10 weights, but just look into getting a 12 or even a 13 to start out with. I think it'll make your life much easier. As far as reels go, this rod right here has a TFO NXT series on it. Really cheap rod, and again, for musky fishing, you never fight the fish on the reel. It's all on the line. You're gonna be holding that line the whole fight and stripping it in as necessary. So the reel on a musky setup is mainly just to hold your line. It's not used for anything else. So don't go buy an expensive reel for your musky setup, unless of course you're planning to use that same setup for like saltwater fish or peacocks or something where you're gonna need that extra drag. A good starting out reel, and this is what a lot of people buy, is the Redington Behemoth. This is $80 to $100 reel, and it has a really good drag system in it. So this setup right here I use for both musky, and I've caught shark with it as well, saltwater. So if you do want to put a little money into a reel, $30–40 difference between these two. The Redington Behemoth is a good place to go. The only downside to this Behemoth is the weight. So that's the nice thing about getting a cheap, small, like 6 or 7 weight reel is it's not heavy. It's really light. You barely notice it's there, and again, it's only there to hold your line when you're musky fishing. Now, I'm not necessarily particular to TFO rods. That is what I use, but the reason that I have TFO rods is, again, rods get broken a lot in our boats. You know, they get neglected and stepped on, and flies get hung up, and they just break. They break. Last year I sent 3 rods out to TFO to get fixed or replaced, and it's no questions asked. If you have a broken rod, no matter how many times it's broken, you can send it in, and within a couple weeks they'll have it back to you ready to go. So that's really important to me, and that is the reason why I choose TFO rods. It's not because they're the best rods on the market, because they aren't. They are not the best rods on the market. I've used some really nice 10 and 12 weights that are just way nicer than these rods, but it's the warranty, the return, and the cost, the overall cost of them that I like. You can get a 12 weight SX rod with reel and line and everything you need for about $400 to $500. So that's about the cheapest you're gonna do for getting into musky fly fishing. Expect to spend, you know, $400 or $500 at least. Alright, so let's move on to leaders. Anyone that's been in the boat with me has seen my black satchel. It's the first thing I look for when we have a fish in the net. It's just got everything I need in it for tying leaders, putting new snaps on. It's got glue in it for fixing baits. It's got my split ring pliers. It's got braid scissors. It's got a handling tool. I just like having this pack in the boat because I know I've got everything I need to keep a fish safe, take hooks out, cut hooks out if need be. It's just got everything. So starting out, let's open it up here. I've got spare hooks. Those are Eagle Claw Laser Shark 4/0. I've got a spool of Seagar 80-pound fluorocarbon. That's what I tie all my leaders with. Got more hooks, VMCs. I've got a file for sharpening hooks. Good tool to have. I've got tails for glide baits. These things get eaten off all the time, so I always carry spare 10-inch grubs for the tails on glide baits. Hook cutters. These are a must for musky fishing. Some kind of nippers. Nip-X makes a really good pair, but any kind of nippers that can handle a really thick musky hook, these you have to have musky fishing. And super glue. That's also really important to have, especially if you throw a lot of gliders like I do. Again, those tails come off and most of them are just glued on. So keeping some Gorilla Glue on the boat or in your pack, really good idea. Let's see what else. Split rings, important. Some business cards, of course. Don't need to show you that. More split rings, and let's see, we got some snaps here, some stay locks. Different size stay locks. We've got some other snaps there. And that's it. A couple zip ties. That's about it. So for tying leaders, a lot of guys will use a swivel from their braid to their fluorocarbon. A lot of guys will buy pre-made leaders like the stealth leaders, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Personally though, I have moved away from using a swivel from my main line to my leader, and that's just mainly due to having clients in the boat using my gear. A lot of them, especially new to musky fishing, will reel that line all the way up to that swivel, and they'll pull that swivel through the first eyelet, the front eyelet, and I've had several eyelets get broken due to that. So I have now moved away from using a swivel, and I now tie a double uni knot from my main line to my 80-pound fluorocarbon. I tie the double uni, and then I put some knot scents some Loon UV knot scents on the knot itself, hit it with the UV light, and it becomes a nice smooth small knot that will just slide right through the guides and won't hurt anything. So that's how I do it. And let's see, split rings, again, snaps, hooks. It's just nice to have all of this stuff in one place, one pack, one box, have it all ready to go, and you don't have to go searching, or you don't have to worry about leaving something behind. It's all ready to go. So braid scissors, really important for cutting through 80-pound braid. Pliers, these have the split ring on the end, split ring hook, so I can open up split rings and change hooks really easily. These are good strong Gander Mountain pliers that I got. And then the last item in here is this big hook that I'm sure everyone's been looking at. That is a handling tool you can use for someone that's not familiar with handling S-Ox. And if you don't have handling gloves, or even if you do, this is a good tool to have. It slips up right under their jaw there in front of their gills, right where your hand would go if you were holding it by hand. But it just keeps your hand out of the danger zone, out of the gill rakers, the teeth. It just keeps your hand free and clear so you can safely pick that muskie up, take a photo, put it back in, unhook it, and you're good to go. So I picked this up, I think it is 15 or 20 bucks. Really nice tool to have in the boat. And that's it, that's my gear. Last item of the day, I'm just gonna do a quick overview of some baits. There is a ton of musky baits out there to choose from, and muskies are picky, so a good musky angler is gonna have quite the variety of baits in his box for any given day. But I'm gonna go over a couple different types of baits and baits that I like, that I do well with, that catch a lot of fish here in Virginia. And it's going to be different wherever you're at. If you're up north fishing for muskies, these baits might not work as well as they do for me. So just keep that in mind. This is a good place to start for Virginia. A lot of these baits are good producers here and have caught a lot of fish. So we're going to start over here just with a crankbait. Okay, there's lots of different crankbaits to choose from. But I'm kind of particular to these shallow invaders. Really good bait, it's got a loud rattle in it, and these catch a lot of fish for us. So this is a good fall bait. We throw mostly crankbaits in the fall, although they will catch fish year round. Just kind of a seasonal thing. Next up, and if you've watched my videos, you've seen these baits quite a bit. The OLT Customs sucker baits. We've got these available for purchase on the website. Constantly catching fish with these. They're just really good baits here in Virginia. They imitate the suckers and bait fish really well, and the fish just tear them up. Probably one of the top producing baits in my box right there. Next, you got heavy soft plastics, pounders, bulldogs, big swim baits. Really good winter baits, although they will work year round. Most people throw big rubber baits in the winter. Again, just kind of a seasonal thing. These are the baits that you will need a stiff rod for, like that Bulldog series. Next up, you got glide baits, and probably my favorite bait to throw. They catch fish year round. They're really fun to watch work when a fish gets behind one and hits it. The action of these baits is side to side. If you ever heard someone call like walk the dog, like with a spook, topwater walking baits, it's the same action, only subsurface. So they do the side to side walking action under the water, subsurface, and man, do these things catch fish. There's a lot of different people that make them, a lot of different companies to choose from. Down here you've got the Widowmaker Sidewinder. You got the small Sidewinder and the large Sidewinder. We have these available on the website as well. Caught a lot of fish on these things. They just produce. Next you've got the Slow Flow baits. Seth Thompson makes these. These are kind of a newer brand that's really gained some popularity this year. Really good action on these, well made, good coat of epoxy on them, really nice paint, just awesome glide baits. We'll see more of those on the channel, I'm sure. And let's see, next you got an Elk River glider. Tim Woodyard makes these. Really good glide bait. He does a good job with these. Again, quality made glide bait. And the last one I pulled out here is a Mark King glider. I believe his company is Keystone King. He makes a really good glider as well. And all of these gliders are very similar. There's not much different. They have slightly different shapes, slightly different weights and sizes. Alright, the last baits I want to discuss here are bucktails and chatterbaits. Traditionally in Virginia, we start throwing bucktails and chatterbaits after the spawn. So starting May into June and then picking back up in September and October when the water cools down. Bucktails can be deadly to throw in here in Virginia for muskie. These bucktails here that I like to throw are made by Bite Back Bait Company. He makes the double 8s, double 9s, lots of different colors. They're well-made bucktail. You can see here they've got the heat shrink on the split ring and hook. Okay, keeps it nice and straight. He uses high quality Flashaboo, high quality wire, just really well-made bucktails. Bite Back also makes a new type of bucktail called the Trilogy. Instead of running with 2 spoon blades, this is one piece. It's 3 different blades put together in one piece, and they start spinning almost as soon as you hit the water and pick up the slack. These things are spinning, churning water, making lots of noise. And man, these things in the last year since Scott started making these baits, nationwide they have just been putting in work, catching a ton of really big fish. And last but not least is the TNA Angry Dragon. This is another newer bait. It's a big chatterbait, jointed, articulating chatterbait. They make them with Flashaboo, they make them with Marabou, they make them with Bucktail, all different kinds of TNA Angry Dragons. And they just make a ton of noise. This big chatter blade up front will vibrate and make so much noise. They will call muskies in from meters away. So that's a really good post-spawn into early fall muskie bait here in Virginia. Alright guys, thanks for sticking around and watching this video all the way through. I know it was a lot longer than the videos we normally put out, but the goal was to be informative, show you guys all the gear we use, the tools you need, the baits and tackles and all that other good stuff. So thanks for sticking around and watching. Do us a favor and give this video a thumbs up. Comment below if you have any questions and I'll try to get to you as soon as I can. And be sure to subscribe if you have not already. Thanks guys, and we'll see y'all in the next one.